Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Nebula. It's July 17th, a Monday, and this is Robb Neuenschwander. I'm a principal architect with Mindset Consulting. The Nebula talks about all things SAP and design and technology. And today we're going to dig into AI, artificial intelligence, and talk about AI in general, talk about its role at SAP and all the great things that are coming of it. Just rolling back from vacation, so I'm eager to jump in and have a little bit of fun with this topic today.
We have reached an inflection point in the history of AI. Now AI has been split into two broad categories, generative AI and AI in general. Let's find out more about these two flavors in today's podcast. I'm Juhi, a senior manager based out of Bengaluru office in Mindset, and I'm glad to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Ankita, Luniya, technical lead with Mindset. I've been here since August 2022, working in the backend dev space. It's amazing how AI has exploded in our lives in the last few months. It would be exciting to engage in this conversation. Looking forward to it.
Hi everyone, this is Kritika. I've been with Mindset for over a year, and I come with around 4.5 years of experience in SAP UI5 mostly, but now I'm branching out to CAPN and SAP PPA as well. So I think learning about artificial intelligence would be great today.
Definitely. And I'm Jonathan Bragg. So I'm the lead our BTP space here at Mindset. And I've been with Mindset for right around 7 years. And maybe a fun fact, since Robb's rolling back from vacation, I am as well. And strangely enough, I think we picked almost the exact place to go on vacation too. So
you did it a little bit better though, John. I think you imagined to squeeze in an Elton John concert, which is nowhere near as we didn't get anywhere near as exciting as a highlight of that. So I'm a little.
Maybe we could speak about AI in the musical industry as well here.
Yeah, right. How was your vacation, John? We haven't even.
No, it was great. Yeah, that was actually probably the highlight. But yeah, no, I'm super excited about the topic because the rest of the things that we can do within, whether it's generative AI or SAP AI in the functional spaces and what's out there, seems like it's on everybody's minds, it's on everybody's talking lists, everybody's playing around with ChatGPT and Bard and all the like. And yeah, super excited to jump in and talk.
Well, let's just start right there. I'll go first a little bit. I said, ChatGPT, I think my first use of it was maybe, I don't know, I want to say about 4 or 5 months ago. Interestingly, I acquired a subscription to Otter AI and started using that a little bit late last year. And then I also had another AI tool that I started using, and then ChatGPT comes along and it's free. It's very simple, Google-like in its simplicity, and then quickly became a pretty standard part of the tool. It so many ways that it can kind of cut corners and make it just easier to be productive and spend more time on value-added thought rather than wordsmithing and trying to come up with doing original research, finding sources, finding information. It does a great job with all that. So those are the biggest things I've used it for to date. What's everybody else doing with it?
Yeah, the hottest new programming platform nowadays is the napkin. So these are the words of a CTO of an IT services giant company. And here he is referring to the usage of OpenAI in order to create a website using a diagram on a napkin. Isn't it great? Just imagine having a coworker with you who knows all the history of your company, who knows the business processes, who knows the data, who knows the nuances and the context of your business processes, and can give you recommendations and business insights in a blink of an eye. That is the power of generative AI, which in today's IT industry. What are your views about it, John?
Yeah, I'd say, from my perspective, just on Robb's thought as well, I think I picked up GPT right around maybe the same time, beginning of this year or so. And for me, the first usage was, as we of course do a lot of hiring in the SAP space, I was trying to fine tune job descriptions or trying to fine tune, how we speak about certain things here at Mindset. And, coming from, I'm sure we can all kind of look like coming from a technical background, I may not be the best English writer in the history of an SAP job. So it helped me out immensely in just knowing how to really form those structures around those things. And like you said, Juhi, in the end-to-end IT world of language learning and other AI tools, it's never been more important to me than to know how to pseudocode, right? The back of the napkin is exactly that. It's, okay, here's what I want this exactly to do. And now if I can explain that in a really, really good way and plug it into some of these tools, I have an entire program right off the bat. So it's crazy. It's a world changer for sure.
Yeah, it feels like instead of having to know syntax in particular, knowing how to write a good prompt is becoming kind of the key intelligence quotient when it comes to working with generative AI.
That was always my coding downfall, was the exact syntax. You get into all these different coding languages. Like, do I need a semicolon or do I
need it to do? And you spend all this time in front of your IDE trying to bang it out, and you're like, that's not quite right. Yeah. Ankita, Kritika, what do you think? What's been your exposure or use of any AI tools?
I think first time, you would like to go first?
Yeah. As developers, I think we are always on the lookout for tools and technologies that can enhance our productivity and streamline the coding process. And recently, I had written one blog on generative AI that was about usage of GitHub Copilot to speed up the ABAP coding. And that was a great experience that I had. I integrated GitHub Copilot with Visual Studio Code. And as we see, GitHub Copilot is an AI-powered coding tool that has significant attention in the developer community. And in that blog post, I ran various experiments as to how GitHub Copilot could accelerate the web coding. It did code synthesis. It was able to generate boilerplate coding. It even generated code snippets, all with usage of simple prompts that we gave to the tool as instructions, as comments. So that's how it helped in speeding up the web development. So yeah, that was my experience about it.
It's cool. And for those who are listening to the podcast, we'll try and get a link to that blog in our show notes, so you have easy access to it there. So when you were going through that process, I'm really curious if you were to have just done that the traditional way, written code, kind of out of your own brain using online resources that to find syntax or different methods, etc. How long do you think it would have taken you to do the same work, and how long did it take with AI? I'm trying to get a sense of how much time that would save.
Right. So if I would have done it the conventional way, I would have taken like a couple of hours to do my research and then write the code, maybe 5 to 6 hours of development. And so I would have taken like a day's time to execute that task completely. But since I had an AI powered tool, which was generating the code for me as I went on, I think I finished it off in 4 hours. So yeah, that it did sped up my development time.
That's awesome. And that's with you just learning about the tool and maybe not even having used it all that much yet. You're probably, your core competence is probably in that traditional way. And so, that's with you using good experience in traditional way and no experience at all with the AI way, or very little at least. Yeah, that's fascinating.
And not just code generation, it also acts as a chatbot. So if you ask questions, it would give you answers as well in form of comments, and even generate documentation for your code. So we spend a lot of time in generating the code documentation. In the end, once we complete everything. So it would, on the go, the tool was able to generate documentation with simple prompts. So that was a great thing.
We just had a roundtable last week to a DevOps roundtable, and we got into this topic a little bit. And the other piece that you didn't mention is it would also, there's tools that can go through and create test cases and kind of make sure that you have good test coverage over everything. So all those, documentation, testing, all the kind of hygiene things that make,
Right.
good development and good developers. These tools can make that process so much easier and so much more effective.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Kritika has been involved in one of the, in building one of the AI applications for resume screening. Kritika, can you tell us more about it and your experience while building it?
Yes, I think I've still not gotten to the AI screening process, but then this is something that we have still planned on doing in the future. But I think, and maybe I can talk about it when I've actually implemented that. But I would like to talk about how I've used ChatGPT because, yeah, I mean, it's one of the common tools that everybody is using now. I think it is very useful for me to bring up differences between things. Let's say some technological terms that I don't know. And like I still have less experience in this field and I'm trying to learn new things. So I would have to go across a lot of documents or maybe blogs for me to figure it out. But maybe in ChatGPT with the right prompts, I was able to get the proper and 2-point answers. And another thing that I tried doing was debugging. Of course, it saved a lot of time for me there. And also a little bit of pseudocode when let's say I type for maybe efficient way of looping through an array or something like that. So I would get it with an example and also the explanation of it. So I think it is actually very efficient that way. It has helped me do my work more efficiently. And yeah, it is less time consuming. Yeah, and I think also once I had to prepare a pitch for Gavin and Paru, and I had too much of development work to do. But what I did was I just made a small document of where I had to put on my main points of the idea, and then I just typed and rephrased it to more maybe technical or maybe more professional, and then it gave me many examples of how I could rephrase it. I think it helped me a lot that day.
And that's awesome. Yeah. So many different ways. What's fascinating to me about it, as many technologies are like this, but this one stands out so much, is the rapid expansion of it. Like we just talked about how it was really only this year that we've really started to use it in earnest. And the technology has existed for a while, but it's on such a rapid expansion now. I think about what we're going to be doing with generative AI tools and related in 12 months, like how much more this will change, and the just kind of the explosion of use, and I'm even only using one or two of these tools. I mean, there's a whole litany of tools available in the industry right now to do all kinds of different jobs, and some of them are very specialized, some of them are very general purpose. This is a callback, John, but even when planning this trip to Switzerland, my wife spent, I don't know, she spent like 4 hours researching different things that we could do in the various cities that we were going to visit, and I wrote like 3 or 4 sentences of prompt in ChatGPT, and it spit out an hourly agenda essentially for each of these days of what we're going to do. And there was at least 80% overlap of the things that she had identified were kind of called out in that agenda. And I said, oh, and we could go to this cafe for lunch too. And I mean, it's like you were there already. It's just fascinating how it can save time like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And the interesting things about like a lot of the previous talks, I feel like, about AI and machine learning and all these tools to automate, I never before felt like they were it felt like marketing to me a lot of the times. Like, even in SAP 3 or 4 years ago, it was all about, here's our automated machine learning freight delivery process area process. And I would look at it and go, well, how many of those things can I not do if I just programmed a really detailed Excel macro from like 20 years ago? It's the same. And that was the weird part to me, is like, well, yeah, it's cool, it's new, it's using some code to loop through and write some scripts and do this stuff, but we're just calling it this new fancy name now. But I don't think that anymore, which is good. I think with AI, it actually is, really, really game changing as far as how people develop, what use cases it can go after, what data sets it can use, where are those data sets housed and how it comes together. And I think all those things are really important into speeding up to be at the pace of business, everybody says. And where are those next use cases? Like, we came out of COVID with supply chain problems. Now, if supply chain's caught up, where's the next problem? And the next problem, the next problem, and try to solve those very quickly with AI.
And the interesting piece too, and I totally get what you're saying, John, because I mean, even as long as I've been in my career, there's been, expert systems and things like that codified rule sets and made decisions, and you could plug in, here's some parameters, and it would give you some output, and it felt a little bit like AI. But I think the machine learning piece to this adds such an interesting dimension where the algorithms themselves are improving. The more data it gets, the more insights it gets, the more feedback it gets, the better it gets at its job. And to your point about even for particular industries or particular companies, a machine learning algorithm trained on data for a company A and the same algorithm trained on data for company B will naturally start to develop better results for each company because of the machine learning component of that. And that to me is, a really maybe part of this ecosystem that doesn't get enough, kind of knowledge or exposure of how that differentiates the value.
Yeah.
Yeah, even I have tried my hands on ChatGPT to generate white papers and architectures, and along with the benefits of very quick text generation, there are some challenges also involved in this whole process. So what I experienced was that it generates a lot of garbage, and this garbage is known as hallucinations. So the logic on which the ChatGPT works is it predicts the next word in the sentence or predicts the next part of the sentence without actual understanding the contextual meaning of the sentence. So when I used it to generate my white paper, I had a lot of challenge reviewing it again and again to take out the irrelevant part and make it more meaningful. So yes, there are challenges involved in using ChatGPT like this, and it fits a given number of scenarios, like scenarios where the risk is less, where you need to generate text in a very less duration, and the scenario where human review is there. So we should be considering all these aspects before we go ahead with the usage of ChatGPT in our particular scenario.
Yeah,
That's
really
very
good.
right, Juhi. I mean, as you mentioned that it took you some attempts to get to your desired response. So yeah, as I also, I'd undergone one course that was on prompt engineering. And one of the major learning from that course was that prompt development is an iterative process. So not necessary that the first prompt may not give you the rightest answer. It's the successive prompts that you keep doing one after the other to arrive at the accurate response that you need from the LLM or the large language model or ChatGPT. Yeah. So apart from that, as you also said that it would take some time. So yeah, we need to give time to the model to think. So if we think that a certain query is a difficult one and the model may need some time to process, we can explicitly tell the model that please take some time to think on this one. And that can also help the LLM to respond in a more accurate, precise way. So yeah, these were a few learnings that I had from that course.
Where was that course from? Was that a Udemy course?
That was deeplearning.ai.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Nice.
very cool.
I have been curious on how all of the AI tool sets and the things that are used today, just, like we said, just in this past year, how that's going to change future education as well. So people will be learning more about how do I prompt correctly versus how do I do. And it's very, very interesting to me. Like, do I need to become the best hopper in the world or the best UI5 JavaScript person in the world? Well, maybe not. Maybe I need to really dig into skill sets such as how do I pseudocode and prompt correctly to be able to generate the right things so that maybe my reviews can be a little bit less. But yeah, it's not something that can be trusted on its own, right? We need to review no matter what, because it's only going to come out with what it comes out with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point, John. It's from the very start of using these that it's always you're going to get a response. You could just take it at face value that's going to be accurate, but I think that's not the right approach, because there still are plenty of examples where you're getting bad outputs, and that review is always critical.
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, human judgment is a very important part here. So we cannot totally rely on the model. Also, I feel, as John, you said that do we need to be the person who can generate effective prompts or do better coding? So with that argument, I also feel one thing down the line, it is more important for a person to understand the process. If you know the process in a effective way, then you would be able to generate an more effective prompt. So not just about writing code, but knowing it all right, having the whole picture, having a bigger picture is more important.
Yeah, really good.
Absolutely.
Really good.
And another challenge which is there for the users of ChatGPT is, the requirements of GPUs and TPUs, which involves a lot of, data storage and a lot of computing resources. So there is in smaller companies, there's a constraint on these resources, and so everyone cannot build and deploy their own models, though we can surely use the open AI services provided by ChatGPT. But the real value of the ChatGPT is realized only when we train it using a business data and further fine tune it according to the specific process that we are using it for. Yeah.
One thing, so that I'm going to use that as maybe a bridge to another topic that I think is really important. So you mentioned that the amount of resource that takes both, kind of computational resources, storage resources, et cetera. One of the aspects that I've done a fair amount of reading on is some of the environmental consequences of the explosion of these resource uses too. It takes up so much energy, and there's some really staggering statistics that can be pulled up, and I don't have any at my fingertips. I probably should have captured some, but there's some really alarming statistics around how much energy it takes to execute some of these models. And there's a subdiscipline within the AI community of really developing more user-friendly or environmentally friendly approaches. And because even like when you do certain types of analysis, you can do a leaner analysis with fewer elements and much lower carbon footprint and achieve 95% accuracy versus achieving 98% accuracy with a much heavier carbon footprint. And so there's a lot of engineering discipline and kind of environmental analysis to be had there. When do you use these machine learning patterns? What types of patterns are most appropriate for particular job types? And trying to make better use in general of the technology so that it doesn't add to our already expanding carbon footprint. It's just one element. That's a very much a kind of an environmental concern. There's also ethical concerns that I've done a lot of reading about around the biases that can be kind of codified by writing algorithms that produce results, and then the machine learning will kind of use those results and learn and take that codified bias and it pretty soon it can become institutionalized within the use of the machine learning. So that's another area that's a broad discipline that I see attached here that I think needs a lot of care and attention.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And the interesting part, I think I saw it on LinkedIn first, then I did some research on it. I think it was Christian Klein that posted it. It's just their overall view and their ethical statements on AI. And I thought it was, one of the industry's best at the moment, because
I
you don't
agree.
see like ChatGPT didn't do that right off the bat. They're starting to rail that back in a little bit. But yeah, just let me read a couple of these out because I thought it was just at a high level. And maybe we can put the link into here as well, because there's a whole like a 12-page document for SAP's guiding principles on AI ethics. But high level, it's we're driven by our values. We design for people. We strive for transparency and integrity. We uphold the quality and safety of standards. We place data protection and privacy at our core. We engage with the wider societal challenges of AI, and we enable business beyond bias. And so those high-level statements then drill down into this whole 12-page document on how they're thinking about AI and how they're going to govern and going to manage it. I thought that was, like I said, I thought that was one of the best ones in the industry right now. Of just like, hey,
Yeah.
let's keep within the rails here and make sure that we're doing this responsibly.
Well, his preamble to that as well, if I remember it correctly, John, and keep me honest here, was largely an acknowledgement that this is a bit of the Wild West and there isn't a lot of regulatory oversight. But there's very little, in fact. And so he was advocating for corporations to be good stewards and to self-regulate and develop policies and standards that promote ethical and responsible use of AI as well. And was really calling upon his peers in the community to kind of do likewise. Did I catch that right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I remember as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the other challenges which generative AI is having is that in cases of institutes like banks, we cannot go about using generative AI because we have scenarios where the login is being done using the voice recognition. So there's a lot of risk in using generative AI in such scenarios, and so we need to keep in mind whether we want to use the open AI or we have a licensed version of the services that we want to use from these LLMs. So the security aspect is a very big concern.
Yeah, for sure. I remember it was a big topic of conversation when they were saying, okay, we're going to connect ChatGPT to the actual internet now and see what happens. Like, well, do we want to do that yet? Who knows? But it's interesting because at least my usage of ChatGPT it's still, what is it, up to date as of 2021, I think, data. And so you're not getting live responses to things that are on the internet, which is, I think, probably pretty responsible still for the moment. But I think Google Bard, though, is a lot more real time. If I remember correctly, I was trying to play around with both of them.
Yeah.
I think that the last time I used Bard for to just see the election results, and the results were not declared yet. So even though the party didn't win, I think it just took statistics or the probability, from what you get on the internet. And then it showed that certain party won, but then the results were not even shown. So I think Bard, there's still more work to be done on Bard.
Right, same. I also had not so great experience with Bard. I mean, I used both of them for the same question that I had. And even though Bard had internet connectivity, but I saw ChatGPT response was more accurate and more what I needed. And Bard wasn't able to give me enough information. So I always use ChatGPT over Bard for any of my queries or scenarios, test scenarios that I have. Use cases.
Yeah, I think the same. I always had more thoughtful responses from ChatGPT. Bard would answer the question, but wouldn't really, word it in a particular way, or I don't know. Yeah, same, wasn't quite as good.
Yeah. So one other topic I wanted to make sure that we address a little bit, at Sapphire, this was a huge topic, right? I think SAP hadn't made a lot of product announcements yet. They had started to hint that there were some things coming, but the genie was let out of the bottle at Sapphire for sure. John, I know you were there. Can you talk maybe about some of the AI tools that they described and that have since come to light, maybe in the BTP space?
Yeah, for sure. So the first Sapphire was great this year, and you could really tell that there was a ton of momentum behind this area. So every BTP session I went to was over full by 200%, right? Standing room of 50 people back within a 50-person theater. Even though we're taking some of the functional areas, like a really good supply chain conversation wasn't full, where some of the BTP services and talks were very overfull. As BTP and AI kind of come together, what they really wanted to showcase for people is that BTP can help your functional process areas. So there was a couple of theaters that I went to that were just repeat showcasing, hey, here's what you can do within SAP AI in finance and supply chain and HR, procurement, sales. So they were trying to hit like a lot of just high-level topic points for the different customers that were going to jump into those little theaters throughout the day. So those are kind of recurring events. But the other tool sets or technologies within BTP that are focused within AI is the tool set itself is build process automation. Right. Mm-hmm. So this is a huge portion of where they're trying to pump a lot of the AI into a little bit of the low code, no code development tools, but along with that, how can we automate? How can we use AI to make this stuff better? The perfect example of that, which I think a few folks here have used, is intelligent document extraction services. So how do I jump in? How do I read a PDF or read any text and make sure I can transfer that into the fields that I want within BPA? And so that's Kritika's example of resume screening, right? Is going to use document extraction to make sure that as soon as we get something in, we can process it automatically within BTP and have a really, really good output of it. The other areas, though, that you wouldn't think of quite as much maybe is Analytics Cloud. So Analytics Cloud with AI, how do we make, to your earlier point, Rob, the decision making that can come out of AI and the machine learning models that can really help come to the next level? SAP Analytics Cloud in their planning space is moving in that direction. So even SAP themselves say that, look, reporting and visualizations are table stakes today, right? You have to have that. And whether you're a Microsoft Power BI, whether you're a ClickView or a Tableau, they all have visualizations. They're all great. SAP Analytics Cloud also has visualizations. They're great. But where does it go from here? How can you actually change that? That's within the planning spaces, within the decision making there. But yeah, those were a couple of the big highlights that I saw just at Sapphire itself and where they're focusing. BTP obviously has the services of AI Core and AI Launchpad itself, where we can actually connect ChatGPT through an API and really do a lot of modeling that way. But yeah, Juhi, I'll let you jump in and others jump in on those topics too.
I think one of the very interesting use case of analytics and basically AI and ML is something. This use case is something that has been running on back of my mind for a very long time. I think this would be predictive ordering. I think John had proposed this during our, I think the time that you had come to India. But then, so mostly it's like for fast-moving consumer goods. So the entire use case is of predictive ordering. So where the data is taken real time from the real time inventory, and then an entire analysis of all the sold out products or the discounted products, or even the vendors, everything is listed, and then based on that, a predictive order is being created for that vendor, And all that person has to do is check the analytics and then check that order that has been just made by the tool, and then make some changes and approve it. I think it would be super useful and a lot of time saving when you have so much data just on your hands and you don't even have to go search for the invoice or ID, the item number, and you just have everything there. So I think that is a very interesting use case. But saying that, I think what we also need to address is the gap that we have between all these new technologies coming. I'm sure they are like very useful, but then I think a lot of SAP customers or a lot of people who work in supply chains are not really using AI and M. And I think that's where the I think problem is. I mean, because no matter how many innovative solutions you come up with, but if this is not being used, then I don't think the intention of the creation of these things would, not be seen.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's probably there's many elements to bring that to life, Kritika, but the two elements that come to mind. First is, the platforms all have to make access to AI available, right, on the platform. And SAP is certainly doing that with the AI core. You can also access via API into, hyperscaler solutions and things like that. So the scale is there, but, the more that they make that readily available, readily exposed, the easier it will be. But the second piece is kind of where, mindset is always kind of waded in and helped companies is the experience and exposing the user experience and the user interface to that AI in a way that really makes it easy for them to interact, easy for them to request results and get the results. And so, because you can use things like natural language instead of typing in a T code and then some parameters and obscure boxes on the screen. That requires a complete rethinking about how you present that to the user, and in a way that makes it effective and also kind of safeguards the controls in the process. So I think there's a lot of UX that needs to happen there.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Rob. It's like, I may sound like the long-term UX broken record, but at the end of the day, an end user of SAP or any other tools, they don't care whether they're in SAP. They don't care whether there's an AI algorithm behind it. They want a better way to do their job. And their job isn't to be an SAP worker. Their job is to get through a procurement process or a warehouse management process or a sales process. And so the ways and the technologies behind how to do that are evolving faster than they ever have. And how we choose to present that to a user to help automate, to help quicken the pace is fully relevant for a user experience and how they actually interact with the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. So SAP has already provided products in the form of SAP AI Business Services, SAP Core Services, and SAP AI Launchpad. But the aspects which we need to consider before using, we should be knowing how to use these tools and how to process our data. So three broad aspects to this are process, tools, and people. So when we talk about process, we should be knowing about the end-to-end processes and how we can leverage AI for these scenarios. What is the business use case and what is the impact of using AI in a particular scenario? And you have different kinds of algorithms working behind the curtains, like supervised, unsupervised, whether you want to use the algorithms for forecasting or predicting, or you want to use the algorithms for recommendations and guidance. So all this process knowledge should be in place in order to leverage these tools. And the second part is the tool itself. So now when we talk about building ML models, we have two kinds of operations. First one is DevOps, which is the usual CI/CD thing which we talk about, which comprises of build, test, deploy, monitor, feedback, and continue the cycle. Not only this, but also another cycle is involved here, which comprises of data gathering, data cleaning, building of a model, training the model, testing the model, monitoring the model, and again continue the whole cycle. So when these two different cycles come together, we call this machine learning operations, or ML ops. So this is one of the biggest aspects of tooling while creating ML models. And last but not the least, one of the most important aspect is people. So now when we have this ML ops in the picture, software engineers alone will not be sufficient for building the machine learning scenarios or AI scenarios. We will need people who understand the nitty-gritties and nuances of machine learning and the algorithms working behind them, how to fine-tune the model and all the other technical aspects of building a machine learning scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, well stated for a human-centric company.
I was just thinking how important now, maybe 15 years ago, I worked at a company that had just started hiring data analysts and data scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see where that role has evolved in the last 15 years or so, it's insanely and hugely important. And just how we analyze and how we can input some of those things into these models.
Yeah, you think how all types of roles back in the the 80s, 90s, 2000s learned Excel just as part of doing their job better and more efficiently. And there's a very similar corollary here with people all needing to learn different, at least elements of data, maybe not data science, but certainly kind of the data understanding and how you leverage it to kind of get their job done better, more efficiently, more effectively.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I think we're right up against the time. So I want to thank you all for the engaging conversation today. This is a topic that we could probably revisit again in a few months to see how much has occurred and how the traction's continuing to evolve in the SAP space as well as in our own lives. So again, I want to thank you all for the time. Hope everybody enjoyed listening to this and our perspectives, and we look forward to talking with you next time. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.